When I was a kid, I was terrified by even the concept of vampires and of horror movies in general, even to the extent that I couldn't see the word vampire written down without getting uneasy. Pathetic, right? But then in high school, something just happened. Like something in me snapped, and I became a complete horror movie fanatic. And I went back and I watched all the horror movies that I'd heard about and were fascinated by, but never had the guts to watch. And among them were all the most famous Dracula movies. The 1931 version with Bela Lugosi, the 1992 version with Gary Oldman, Nosferatu with Max Schreck. But to my shame, one version which I never got around to watching until now was the Hammer Horror Christopher Lee version, which was called Horror of Dracula. It was originally called Dracula, but it was renamed so as to avoid confusion with the 1931 Dracula film. When compared to the book, it's like the watermark of the plot is there. All the very broad strokes, but all the details are completely different. All the characters' relations and motivations. Arthur Homewood is all of a sudden Lucy's brother instead of her suitor. Mina is Arthur's wife instead of Jonathan's wife. Jonathan is Van Helsing's assistant vampire hunter. It's very strange, but welcome in a way. Really, when you watch lots of different versions of the same story, you almost welcome radical changes in plot, because otherwise it just becomes kind of samey and repetitive. And I think there's enough in this version and that version when put together to make a relatively faithful version of the book. There's a great quality to Hammer horror films, I've noticed. They're very vibrant, the Technicolor oversaturated vibrance, and the performances, because they're British productions, but they're genre horror stories and stuff like that. So there's this weird combination of English propriety, people having cups of tea and pipes and stuff like that. We must deal with this Dracula problem. Oh yes, it's terrible. And this gorgeous hammy acting. People going, oh no. It's always visceral, the exaggeration in the performances. Brilliant cast, lovely to watch all of them. Christopher Lee as Dracula, Peter Cushing as Van Helsing, and as Arthur Homewood, Michael Gough, who's probably best known for playing Alfred in the 90s Batman films. And if he isn't known for that, then he should be. One thing that I definitely liked and appreciated about it was that Dracula, the character himself, I think he had one or two sentences at the beginning of the film and then nothing at all for the rest of the movie. He was just this monolithic presence. Even though the plot resembles very little the original story, it's up there with Nosferatu in the depiction of Dracula as less of a human and more of this sinister force that appears and disappears, which is an element that I loved in the book that you rarely see in the films. It's done in a style that you couldn't get away with nowadays. If a film nowadays was that sort of oversaturated and overacted, it'd be chased out of town by people with pitchforks. It's a wonderful escape into this classic Dracula world of old age horror.